Hello, I'm Adip. I'm currently pursuing my Bachelor's of Technology from Woxen University, and I've recently noticed all over the news that you have articles claiming AI will take over the world. And I've come to realize that yes, AI will most likely be the next colonizer, but it's not in the Terminator style robots taking over the world, but it's more about the economic control and socio-political control it will have and wield over both individuals and countries, and how stakeholders who control AI will end up having more and more influence over the world. And to talk about this, I thought whom better to ask than someone who's currently pursuing international economics, Mr. Ishan.
Thank you, Adip. I'm Ishan Jasuja. I'm a master's student of International Political Economy at King's College London and a research fellow at the 16th Council, the Brian-driven policy group, where we do a lot of research on the global political economy and, of course, AI being one of the most talked about topics in the sphere.
Great. So, first, could you give us some context on how colonization actually works?
Yes, so colonization is the most explicit demonstration of power in international relations, right? So it is essentially getting other countries from, if you look at it from a international country-wise lens, it is essentially getting countries to do something that they would otherwise not do. So you've got an imperial power that exercises control over other countries. That was the traditional definition of colonization, which is why you had empires. But today, of course, it's a more nuanced form, a little more implicit through economic colonization, what people are calling new imperialism, essentially economically colonizing countries. So it's the advanced economies exercising control over emerging markets and developing states. Uh, Colonization takes place, again, from an international theory perspective, through the three phases of power. So you've got the first phase, which is hard power. It is the most explicit exercise of power through guns, ammunition, essentially getting other countries to do something they would rather not do through the use of force. Then you've got the second phase of power, which is agenda setting. You see this in international organizations plenty of times. It is shaping the options available to countries in such a way that all of them benefit you to some degree. The third most intricate exercise of power is through the third phase of power. That is shaping the tastes and preferences of individual societies and countries at large, where they essentially are not aware of other options available to them other than the ones that benefit you.
Right. So, like, this is what we're seeing with the rise of social media and how big tech companies are able to influence the opinions of people, users of their social media tools, and how they wield control over these people. And this brings me to an interesting case study that I recently read. About a decade ago, right before Russia was about to invade Chechnya, it used a form of cyber warfare where it isn't your typical hacking systems taking data, but it was more of creating a sort of identity crisis among the youth present in Ukraine, where what it had done was it started an online propaganda campaign where it began to talk about how Ukrainians are actually just Russians, and it was Western propaganda which divided them up into two different people, two different identities, such that it would benefit them, and how in reality it was all just ruse, and they're all just Russians. And the idea behind this was that there'd be lesser resistance when the actual military force comes in, which it's very interesting to see how information and social media was used about a decade ago. And now with targeted ads, personalization, personalized social media recommendations, all of that makes this fear even a lot more scary because you're able to weaponize these systems. And it's scary to see how much further AI will take this. And so, what do you think will happen next? How do you think these tools are going to be used by people who want to wield influence, who want to wield control?
You're right, and because propaganda has been a key form of warfare throughout history. I mean, people cite World War II as one of the most prominent examples of propaganda warfare, but beyond that, even in imperial times, it was quite widely used. AI has just amplified those risks because now you can target individual communities, people, as you said, through algorithms, and you have a wider data pool available. So you know what to target, essentially. One of the biggest risks I see in this sphere, which is the concentration of AI power through manufacturing or its application in the hands of a few wealthy countries, advanced economies mostly from the global north, with the global south and emerging markets being left behind, which has been the case with several technological advancements, not only AI which we're seeing today.
Yes, and this goes way beyond just control over opinions. You have three different pillars of AI where control can be wielded. You have the data which is being collected, the data which is required for training these models. You have the algorithms which are actually trained, and then you have the infrastructure that all of these are trained on. And controlling any of these would allow you to influence policy, would allow you to influence economies for just individuals. And this is something that we've seen with, as you said, concentration of power, monopolization, where you have all these big tech companies being able to sort of move policy the way they like. And yes, you have a lot of talk on responsible AI, but in a larger sense, you have the problem of them forming the policy such that it benefits them. It sounds a lot like what the British did initially. Hence the parallels on how this is not just corporate relations, this is in some essence monopolization. And now, when you have certain countries like the global north, like the West, where you have all these companies hidden, where you have all these companies who base their operations out of, they wield some of the other power on top of all the other countries, where you see more and more dependency on AI systems as our governments are getting more and more AI based. And yes, it is convenient. You have, take DG Yatra as an example, you have the Indian domestic travel being dependent on AI. But now where are all those resources coming from? What do you think will happen?
Yeah, this translates into the risks that I was talking about, right? The concentration of power, because the manufacturing capability of AI hardware, GPUs, microchips, nanochips, what you want, they are very much concentrated in the hands of wealthy economies because they have naturally the ability to manufacture them at scale. And if you look at the AI race today, dominated by two countries, the United States and China. The United States, I feel, has an edge over the Chinese in terms of manufacturing the hardware through its companies like Nvidia, etc., which are very much ahead of the game in terms of GPU manufacturing and chip manufacturing. But the Chinese have the advantage of accessing a wider data pool because of their surveillance-based governance and essentially making AI software in a manner that benefits the state. So this is the dichotomy that we are at because the Chinese still need American hardware to manufacture their advanced AI chips, which are a derivative of those most of the times, or have the advanced AI models run on American chips anyway. So that is a technical aspect I think you should give a little bit more insight on.
Yes. So while China is advancing its own hardware capabilities, it is still pretty dependent on American made chips, for which it provides the raw materials, which provides an interesting cycle of power. But if we go beyond just these two duopolies, almost every other nation is being dependent on them, and hence it is on some level colonization again. And as there's a very interesting statement that was made by Mukesh Ambani recently during the NVIDIA summit, and he said, "quote We are not going to export our data to import intelligence," which is very important because along with China, India has one of the biggest data markets in the world, and us having to export it to other countries for it to be processed is it is not the greatest show of power, one. And it means we are not just sacrificing a country's power, we are providing what is some person, some individual's personal data outside the country, which throughout most of the past century was not allowed. Was the intelligence that we talk about was one of our biggest advantages, one of our biggest strengths. And so, how do we go on and about developing this infrastructure is what is going through most of these key players, key stakeholders of each of the countries. How do you develop that infrastructure in your own country? Or if not develop it, how do you buy it instead of having to send it over to a different country?
Exactly, because on a personal level, you highlighted the privacy concerns that are
Yes.
associated with data transfers. If you look at a national scale, you have concerns regarding sovereignty, because
Yes.
this data can be misused. You do not really want to have your information being broadcast in foreign countries, which may be used for their ulterior motives, etc., etc. So look at what the United States did with the CHIPS Act, right? Because we are seeing protectionism in AI, I think, more than any
Yes.
other industry right now. Because countries want to limit transfers of critical technologies, which can be used making advanced AI chips, whatever. And secondly, it is all about incentivizing the domestic production of microchips, AI hardware, and software, which is what the US did with the CHIPS Act. I mean, they were incentivizing Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company with $11.6 billion grant to come and set up plants in the United States. I mean, if that is not incentivization to protect domestic manufacturing of AI hardware and AI software, I do not know what is.
Yes. So I think we as a country should also be focusing more on that. I see private players doing so, and I'm hoping for the government to be more in support of such initiatives. But going beyond just that, how do you think this entire dependency on AI is going to influence how policy is written going forward?
So policy on AI is of course going to be dictated by people who are leading the AI race, right? I mean, history is written by victors, not people who are victims. So policy, again, like I said, with AI manufacturing in itself is very concentrated in the hands of wealthy countries. I mean, you had two AI summits so far, the first being in the United Kingdom in 2023 and another one being in Seoul, South Korea in 2024. Both of them very limited participation. I mean, you had around 30 countries. The UK summit was only participated in by around 28 countries. Again, mostly major advanced economies, G20 plus a few others. So this is the dichotomy, right? I mean, you want to make AI accessible to as many people as possible, but you do not want to involve them in the decision making and the regulation of AI. This is the biggest risk, essentially.
And it is highly hypocritical. And there's a lot of fear mongering going on regarding this topic and whether AI should be as big as it is becoming. In my opinion, it should, with the necessary precautions being taken because of the sheer amount of efficiency, productivity, and convenience that it provides to our lives. Never in history did we stop moving forward because of the fear of what will happen next.
I agree, because if you hear people like Darren Acemoglu, professor of economics at MIT, recently a Nobel Prize winner in economics, he points out that AI has this ability to increase the productivity of the labor force, which is something that we need right now to accelerate development, industrialization, etc. However, in the next 5 to 10 years, do you see, because I do not, this whole change of game where AI is replacing jobs at fast enough pace that unemployment is rising at unbelievable levels?
I think more than just it replacing jobs, there'll be a shift in the job market. There'll be a shift in the kinds of jobs which are generated, which are produced, and there will be an interim period where you'll have a lot of people who are displaced. They do not understand how to do so because they are not equipped with the necessary skills to work in an AI-driven world. However, with time to follow, the job markets will adapt. They will evolve, and there has always been a sort of demand and supply change, even in people, employers, employees, and how the number of jobs present will always try to match the requirement.
I see, because AI is not only subtracting jobs currently, it is also adding jobs. You've got programmers, you've got input creators, in AI, prompt engineers.
Prompt engineers.
So these people are being very sought after at this stage.
Yes, and it's not only on the software ends. You have, interestingly, in rural India, a lot of jobs which have been created, a lot of money which has been poured into rural India by the West for translation, for example. You have a lot of AI systems that Google is building which focus on regional usage, regional languages. And so you require people to collect this data, to create this data. And a lot of jobs are created in such a manner, and they're being paid very well. And this created new job opportunities for rural India, something which people did not expect or predict.
You're right, because when you talk about money being poured in, I want to talk about investment in this area a little bit, because this industry, artificial intelligence, is seeing investment like nobody has ever seen before. It is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, if you look at S&P 500, it is being driven by big tech companies, Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft,
Yes.
who are relying on AI, next big boom,
Yes.
to drive valuations up.
Yes, and in my opinion, an increase in productivity will only ever increase a need for, or a want for people to want more things, for more greedy approach.
So you're saying
And
it's
so-
a demand-driven.
Yes, it'll be a demand-driven industry, and supply will eventually match it. And as supply is increasing, there will be an increase in demand for the same. And the jobs will not be limited on just software end. It'll be impacted by all three pillars.
Right.
You'll require more and more people to mine materials. You'll have an increase in physical labor for that, for mining resources, for building these chips, and then on the software and developers, as we mentioned, and then collection of data.
Right. Because this is what the capital markets are counting on, I feel. Because if you look at valuations, I mean, Nvidia hit above 3 trillion recently. There was this very famous British economist called John Maynard Keynes, and his magnum opus, The General Theory of Money, Interest, and Employment. He highlights this dynamic or phenomenon called animal spirits of investors, like where we do not always make investment decisions rationally. We are often impacted by confidence and sentiment in the markets. And I think AI, just because of its potential right now, is garnering Keynesian animal spirits like nothing has ever had before. People are seeing that it has the potential to impact several industries, a cross-cutting impact across the economy, and as you pointed out, certain supply chains as well. So there's no wonder that people are pouring money into AI like nobody's ever seen before.
Yes, and no wonder you have articles being written such as AI will take over the world. And it is because it, in a very literal sense, is taking over the world. It has taken the world by storm. That's not a question. And so you have it, coming back to it, controlling and wielding influence over economies as a whole. And so it'll be very interesting to see how this moves on.
Absolutely, because if you look at how hegemonic cycles in the international political economy have taken place, you can view them in epochal terms, right? So you can identify one epoch, for example, the Pax Britannica, where Britain was the preeminent industrial, economic, and political force throughout the world. Exercising power at its industrialization underpinned by the Industrial Revolution, for example. Then you got the United States of America post World War II through Fordism and mass consumerism, large scale manufacturing, exercising power and establishing its economic hegemony worldwide. However, in today's times, I think the technology underpinning hegemonic cycles is information technology and artificial intelligence. So the key right now is to have leadership in that area for any country, either looking to preserve its hegemony or challenge the existing power dynamics in the world.
Right. So let's see what happens in time to come. It was wonderful having this conversation with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming to my home. Thank you for coming all the way. It's a pleasure to host you.
It was a pleasure to talk to you, Ishan.